It was a cold and stormy night. Rain hitting the old cabin roof again and again. Jake sat by the fire alone, listening to the wind that howled through the dark trees. He lived deep in the forest, far from the city, far from anyone who could bother him. For him, silence was peace, but tonight silence was broken. A loud explosion came from the woods, a sound that shook the ground beneath him. The lights flickered, the fire cracked, and for a moment everything went still. Then, a blue flash lit up the forest outside, brighter than lightning. Jake grabbed his flashlight and his old rifle, his heart beating faster with every step. He pushed the door open and stepped into the rain. Cold water ran down his jacket, but his eyes were fixed on the strange blue glow between the trees. He walked toward it, careful and slow, every sound echoing in the dark. The smell of burnt metal filled the air, and the ground was warm under his boots. When he reached the clearing, he froze. There, half buried in the mud, was something not from Earth, a small ship, broken and smoking. Strange symbols glowing faintly on its side. Jake's hands trembled. He had seen enough sci-fi movies to know this wasn't human. He took a deep breath and stepped closer. The ship made a weak humming sound. Then a hatch opened with a hiss. Inside he saw movement, two shapes, one tall and one small. The tall figure stumbled forward. Holding the smaller one close, Jake aimed his light, and for a second his breath stopped. The tall one was a woman, but not human. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes large and blue, shining even in the dark. She was bleeding from her shoulder, her breathing fast and shaky. The small one clung to her chest, a child, glowing faintly like a soft light bulb. "Please, help," the alien woman whispered, her voice weak and broken. Jake lowered his gun, shocked but moved. He didn't understand why, but he couldn't leave them there. He stepped closer and said softly, "You need to come with me." "It's not safe here." The woman hesitated, her glowing eyes full of fear. But she nodded. Jake helped her stand, supporting her arm. The child looked up at him with curious eyes that seemed to see right through him. As they walked back through the forest, thunder rolled across the sky. Behind them, the ship let out a final spark, then went silent. Back at the cabin, Jake brought them inside and locked the door. The alien woman sat on the floor, holding her child tightly, shivering. Jake fetched a blanket and wrapped it around them. He didn't know what else to do, but helping felt right. The woman looked at him and whispered again, "Thank you, human." Jake smiled nervously. "You're safe here, whoever you are." The child looked around, touching the walls. The lights flickered each time its small hand glowed. Jake noticed the strange reaction but said nothing. He gave them water and the woman tried to speak. "My name, Arya," she said slowly, as if learning the words. "This, my child Luma," Jake nodded. "I'm Jake, you're hurt. I'll get the first aid box." When he cleaned the wound, her blood shimmered like liquid light. It didn't look like any blood he had ever seen. Still, she smiled faintly. "You, kind human," she said before fainting.
Jake carried her to the couch, covered her with another blanket.
Luma sat beside her, silent and watching. When Jake tried to touch the child's shoulder, a small spark of energy ran through his hand. It didn't hurt, but it felt alive. He stepped back, unsure what he had gotten himself into. Outside, faint red lights appeared in the distance, moving through the forest. Jake frowned, walking to the window. Military search drones. Their lights scanning through the trees. He turned off all lamps and whispered, "Stay quiet." Arya's eyes opened halfway, weak but aware. "They coming?" "For us," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Jake's chest tightened. "Who's coming?" Arya looked toward the door. "Hunters. They follow the ship, they kill survivors." Jake's hand went to his rifle. He didn't understand everything, but one thing was clear. He couldn't hand them over. Not to the military, not to anyone. The drones passed near the cabin, but didn't stop. When their lights faded, Jake exhaled slowly. He looked at Arya and her child, sleeping now, their glow fading into a soft calm. He sat back by the fire watching them, wondering who they were. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time, he wasn't thinking about the storm. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" In that moment, he didn't know. This night would change everything. It was the night he met something beyond human. And it was only the beginning. Morning came slowly, light breaking through the cracks of the cabin's old wooden walls. Jake woke up in the chair, his neck stiff, his mind still spinning from what happened last night. For a moment he thought it was a dream, until he looked across the room and saw her, the alien mother Arya, lying under a blanket, breathing softly, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Beside her sat the child, Luma, wide awake. Watching the fire with bright, curious eyes, Jake rubbed his face and whispered, "So it wasn't a dream after all." The child tilted its head and smiled, a soft hum vibrating in the air like the sound of a crystal singing. Jake blinked, amazed. "You really are something else." "Kid," he murmured. He stood up, stretched, and started making breakfast, though he wasn't sure if aliens even ate eggs or bread. The smell of coffee filled the cabin, mixing strangely with the faint metallic scent from Arya's wound. A few minutes later, Arya opened her eyes. She looked around, her expression soft but alert. "We are safe?" she asked slowly, her accent thick. Jake nodded. "For now, yes, no one came last night." Arya looked at Luma, then back at Jake. "Thank you, Jake." Her voice was gentle but carried a sadness that even words couldn't hide. Jake poured her a glass of water. "You need rest? Your shoulder still looks bad." She took the glass, her fingers trembling slightly. "It will heal. Fast," she said. And to Jake's surprise, the wound already looked smaller, glowing threads of light weaving across it like tiny living wires. Jake stared. "That's unbelievable," Arya smiled faintly. "Different body." "Same pain," she said. Outside, the forest was quiet, but Jake could feel something in the air, the same uneasy feeling that came before a storm. He walked to the window and looked toward the distant hills. Black shapes moved far away, drones maybe or something else. He knew the government would not ignore a crash like that. He turned back to Arya. "Who's looking for you?" "The army? Someone worse?" Arya hesitated, her eyes dimming. "Not army. Hunters," she said. Jake frowned. "Hunters?" She nodded. "They destroy my people. Follow across stars. No mercy." Her words sent a chill down Jake's spine. He sat down, his voice low. "Why you? Why come here?" Arya looked at the fire, her face lit by the flames. "We carry life. Code of my world," Jake didn't understand. "Code?" She pointed to her chest. "Inside me. DNA of my kind. All that's left." Jake's mind froze. "You mean you're carrying the future of your species?" Arya nodded slowly. "Yes. My people gone. Only me and Luma survive." The room fell silent. The only sound was the fire cracking. Jake didn't know what to say. He wanted to help, but this was beyond anything he'd ever imagined. One night he was just a lonely man in a cabin, and now he was protecting the last of an alien race. Luma crawled closer, reaching for Jake's arm. When the child touched him, he felt a soft warmth spread through his skin. It wasn't painful, just strange, like sunlight trapped under his hand. Then, for a moment, images flashed in his mind. A city of light, tall towers floating above a blue ocean. He gasped and pulled his hand back, breathing hard. Arya looked at him sharply. "Luma!" "Stop," she said, and the child stepped away quietly. Jake blinked. "What was that?" "I saw something." "Your world?" Arya nodded. "Luma. Connected mind to you. Show memory." Jake rubbed his temples. "So your kid can share memories?" That's crazy," Arya smiled sadly. "For us, normal." Outside, thunder rumbled again. Though the sky was clear, Jake felt uneasy. "We can't stay here long," he said. Arya agreed. "They will track signal from ship soon." Jake thought for a moment, then said, "There's an old cellar under the cabin. Nobody knows it's there." He pulled up the rug and opened a trapdoor, revealing the dark basement below. "We'll hide there if they come." Arya looked down into the darkness and nodded. She lifted Luma gently, whispering something in her own language. Jake helped her down the steps, lighting a small lantern. The cellar was small but warm, lined with shelves and old boxes. He set up blankets and food. Trying to make it feel safe, hours passed. The day turning to night again, Jake sat at the top of the stairs. Keeping watch with his rifle, Arya and Luma slept below, glowing softly like faint stars in the dark. Every sound outside made Jake's heart jump. Then just before midnight, a shadow moved past the window. Jake froze, his finger on the trigger. A low humming sound filled the air. Not thunder, not drones, something else. Arya opened her eyes in the dark and whispered, "They found us." Jake whispered back, "Stay quiet. I'll handle this." He peered through the cracks of the window and saw light scanning through the trees again. Red beams swept across the cabin walls. Moving slow and precise, Jake held his breath, praying they wouldn't find the hatch. Minutes felt like hours, until finally the lights faded away. Jake exhaled, his hands shaking. He climbed down into the cellar and looked at Arya. Her eyes were full of trust and fear. He said softly, "They're gone for now. But we need a plan." Arya nodded. "Soon. I tell you truth. All of it." Jake didn't know what that meant, but deep down, he felt it. The real danger hadn't even begun yet. And as the night grew colder, the cabin felt smaller. 3 lives trapped together by fate. 1 human, 1 alien mother, and 1 child who could show memories through touch. In that silence, Jake realized something important. He wasn't just hiding them anymore. He was becoming part of their story. Night turned into morning, but the air around the cabin still felt heavy and strange. Jake hadn't slept, his eyes fixed on the forest outside, always waiting for a sound that didn't belong down in the cellar. Arya and her child were silent, resting, the soft glow from their skin fading with every hour. Jake's thoughts were tangled, a mix of fear and curiosity. He had saved lives before, animals, even strangers in car accidents. But this was different. He wasn't sure if he had saved them or just invited danger into his home. When the sun finally rose, Jake went downstairs. The air was cool and smelled faintly like metal and ozone. Arya sat cross-legged, her eyes closed, her hands glowing softly over Luma's head. The child's breathing was slow, peaceful, as if the light itself was healing her. Jake watched for a while before speaking. "What are you doing?" Arya opened her eyes slowly. "Giving energy." "Life," she said softly. Jake knelt beside them. "She okay?" Arya nodded. "Yes, but her energy weak. Earth's air heavy. Hard for her kind." Jake looked at her, wondering again who they really were. He asked, "You said last night you'd tell me the truth. About why you're here." Arya took a long breath and nodded, her silver hair catching the faint lantern light. "You saved us, so I tell you," she said. Her voice calm but filled with sorrow. She looked up at the ceiling as if remembering the stars. "My world was called Alaris," she began. "A blue world, bright and alive. We were scientists and creators. Not warriors," she continued. "But another race, the Kethar, came. They took everything." Her voice cracked, her eyes shimmering with tears. "They burned the cities, killed the oceans, hunted my kind for what we carry." Jake frowned. "What do you carry?" Arya placed her hand on her chest where a faint light pulsed beneath her skin. "The seed code," she whispered. "The pattern of life, everything from my world stored inside this." Jake stared. "You mean, like DNA?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, but not just for one being, for all life, for all of Alaris." Jake felt his heartbeat rise, trying to understand. "So you're saying you carry the key to rebuild your species?" "Yes," she said softly. "And that is why the Kethar chase us across galaxies." Luma stirred beside her, mumbling softly in a language Jake couldn't understand. Arya brushed her child's hair gently, her expression filled with love and sadness. "We were meant to find a world safe enough to begin again," she said. "But when we arrived near your planet, they followed us, attacked our ship, and we crashed." Jake sat back, speechless, the fire of disbelief flickering in his eyes. "And you think Earth is that safe world?" he asked quietly. Arya looked at him, her gaze deep and thoughtful. "It was not our first choice, but your world. It is special." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Special how?" She smiled faintly. "Because your kind carries part of us." Jake blinked, confused. "Part of you?" Arya nodded. "Long ago, before war, our ancestors sent seeds of life into space, searching for balance. Some of those seeds found your Earth," she said softly, "and grew into what you now call humans." Jake froze, his mind racing. "Are you saying humans came from your world?" Arya nodded slowly. "Yes, you are our lost children." The air seemed to thicken around them. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he tried to take it in. He wanted to laugh, to deny it, but deep down something in him believed her. He remembered the connection he felt when Luma touched him. That sudden vision of their world, it hadn't been imagination. It had been memory, Jake whispered. "That's why your child could show me your world." "Our DNA's connected," Arya nodded gently. "You understand now." Jake stood, pacing slowly, trying to breathe. "So if what you say is true, then helping you means helping my own kind." "Yes," Arya said softly. "And that is why you were chosen." Jake turned to her sharply. "Chosen? By who?" Arya lowered her head. By the code? Jake frowned. The code? You mean that DNA thing? She nodded again. The seed code can sense balance. It connects to those who still carry the origin pattern. And when you touched Luma, she said slowly. The code reacted to you, Jake's heart pounded. Reacted how? Arya looked up, her glowing eyes filled with quiet awe. You are compatible, Jake. Your DNA holds what ours lost. Jake took a step back, shaking his head. Wait, what are you saying? Arya stood slowly, her presence calm but powerful. You can help restore us. Not just by hiding us, but by becoming part of the code itself. Jake's breath caught. You mean? She nodded gently. Yes, you can help create the next generation of my kind. The words hung in the air like thunder. Jake stared at her, speechless, his mind spinning. He didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. Arya stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. I do not ask for this lightly, human, but if we fail, both our species may vanish. Outside, the wind picked up again, whispering through the trees like voices from another world. Jake looked at Arya and then at Luma, sleeping peacefully, glowing like a star. He whispered to himself, What am I getting into? Arya watched him, her eyes full of quiet hope. Maybe destiny, she said. Jake turned away, staring out the small window at the endless forest. He could see the sky turning silver. Dawn breaking, a new day beginning. And maybe, a new chapter for all life. He didn't know if he was ready, but something inside him already knew there was no turning back. The truth was out now. The woman he had saved was not just a survivor. She was the mother of a future that might belong to both of their worlds, and Jake was now part of it. The morning light slipped quietly through the cracks in the cabin walls, but peace didn't last long. Jake hadn't moved from his chair all night, his mind still struggling with everything Arya had told him. Her words echoed again and again. You can help create the next generation. He rubbed his face, trying to push the thought away, but deep down, he knew things were already changing. Arya stood near the window, her silver eyes calm but watchful. Luma sat beside her, drawing strange shapes on the wooden floor with soft, glowing fingers. The air felt heavy, thick with tension, like the world itself was holding its breath. Jake looked outside and froze far beyond the trees. Faint red lights flickered through the mist, moving, searching, closing in. They're back, he whispered. Arya's gaze sharpened instantly. Hunters? Jake nodded. Could be. Or maybe the military, but whoever they are, they're getting close. Arya placed her hand on the wall. Her eyes closing, for a moment the cabin hummed with faint energy. When she opened her eyes again, she said, Yes, the hunters. I feel their signal. Jake's stomach turned cold. What do we do? Arya looked at him, her voice steady. We hide, but if they find us, we run. Jake checked his old rifle, knowing it wouldn't stand a chance against alien hunters. Still, he felt safer holding it. He turned off every light and told Arya to take Luma to the cellar. Down below, the air was thick and damp. Jake moved quietly, placing old boards and blankets to cover the trapdoor. Arya held Luma close, whispering softly in her language. The glow from their bodies dimmed until it almost disappeared. Jake whispered, Stay quiet, don't move, and climbed back up the stairs. The cabin was dark now, only faint sunlight breaking through the curtains. Outside, the low hum of engines grew louder. Jake crouched near the window, peeking through a small gap. He saw shadows moving through the trees, tall, thin, and metallic. Not human soldiers, but machines, walking on 4 glowing legs. Each carried a red scanning light that swept across the forest like a silent search beam. Jake's heart pounded as one of the machines stopped near the cabin. It turned its red eye toward the house, scanning slowly. Jake held his breath, his finger tight on the rifle's trigger. The beam passed across the walls, then stopped on the door. For a long second, everything was silent. Then the door creaked open on its own, pushed by an invisible force. A gust of cold wind swept through the room as the red light entered. Jake backed away, silent, his pulse racing. The machine floated inside, its limbs clicking softly, scanning every corner. When it moved toward the trapdoor, Jake acted. He jumped from behind the table and fired. The bullet hit the metal shell. Sparking bright, the machine turned sharply, releasing a piercing sound that shook the windows. Jake fired again, hitting one of its legs. The machine staggered, then aimed a glowing weapon at him. A flash of light burst from its core, burning through the wall behind Jake. He rolled to the floor, barely missing the beam. Smoke filled the room as he crawled toward the back door. He fired one last shot and shouted, "Now, Arya, go!" The trapdoor burst open as Arya climbed out. Her eyes glowing bright, she raised her hand, and the air around the machine twisted. Metal groaned and bent as if crushed by invisible hands. The machine fell to the ground. Its lights fading out, Arya looked at Jake, her breathing heavy. "More coming. We must leave." Jake nodded. "Grab your things, hurry." Within minutes, they packed what little they had, blankets, food, and Arya's strange crystal sphere that pulsed softly with light. Jake opened the back door, leading them through the forest path. The air outside buzzed with strange energy. Far above, a red ship hovered in the sky, silent and deadly. "They found us," Arya whispered. Clutching Luma close, Jake gritted his teeth. "Then we keep moving." They ran through the trees, their footsteps muffled by the wet ground. The forest glowed red from the search beams cutting through the fog. Behind them, more machines landed, spreading out like a hunting pack. Jake turned and fired, hitting one, then ducked behind a fallen log. Arya pressed her palm to the ground, whispering words Jake couldn't understand. The earth trembled, roots and vines burst from the soil, wrapping around the machine's legs for a moment. The forest itself seemed to fight back. "Go!" she shouted, her voice echoing like thunder. Jake pulled her arm. "Come on, don't stop." They ran until their lungs burned, reaching the edge of an old bridge over a deep ravine. The structure looked unstable, but it was their only way across. Jake helped Arya and Luma step carefully onto the wood. The bridge creaked, swinging with every step halfway across. A beam of red light shot past them, burning the ropes. The bridge snapped, sending them all falling into the darkness below. Jake hit the ground hard. Pain shooting through his shoulder, he groaned. Looking around, they had landed in a riverbed below the ravine. The water was shallow, glowing faintly with reflections from the ship above. Arya lay beside him, still holding Luma tight. "Are you okay?" Jake gasped. Arya nodded weakly. "Yes, but they will not stop." Jake looked up. The red ship moving slowly above the trees, scanning the area. He helped Arya stand. "We'll find another place to hide." She looked at him, her eyes glowing brighter. "No, we go deeper." "Deeper?" he asked, confused. Arya pointed toward a dark cave near the riverbank. "There," she said, "the code will protect us inside." Jake didn't argue. He just nodded and led the way as they entered the cave. The hum of the ship faded behind them. Inside, strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, the same ones Jake had seen on Arya's ship. The air buzzed softly, as if the place was alive. Arya whispered something in her language, and the cave sealed itself behind them like a closing door. Jake stood in the dim light, panting, looking at her in awe. "What is this place?" he asked. Arya looked around, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "This," she said, "is the last temple of Alaris. Hidden for this moment." Jake stared at her, realizing they weren't just running anymore. They had arrived at something ancient, powerful, and connected to everything she had told him. And as he stood there, deep underground with two beings not of his world, he understood one thing clearly. The chase was only the beginning. Deep inside the hidden cave, silence wrapped around them like a blanket. Only the faint hum of the glowing walls filled the air, a soft vibration that felt alive. Jake looked around, eyes wide with wonder. Every surface was covered with strange symbols that moved like flowing light. Arya stood in the center of the chamber, her silver skin reflecting the glow, her face calm but focused. Luma clung to her arm. Watching with wide, bright eyes, Jake whispered, "What is this place?" Arya placed her hand on one of the glowing patterns. "This is a memory chamber," she said. "It holds the knowledge of my world." Jake stepped closer, running his hand along the wall, feeling warmth pulsing beneath his fingers. "It's alive," he murmured. Arya nodded. "The code lives in every light here. It waits for the one who can unlock it." Jake frowned. "And that's supposed to be me, right?" Arya turned toward him, her eyes soft. "Yes. The code answered your touch before it will answer again." She motioned for him to stand beside her, then lifted her glowing sphere and placed it in the center of the floor. The air rippled, and the symbols on the walls began to spin slowly, forming circles of light around them. Jake's heart pounded as beams of blue light connected to the sphere. Images began to appear. Cities floating in the sky, oceans glowing under twin suns, creatures that looked both alien and familiar. He whispered, "That's your home." Arya nodded. her voice trembling. Alaris, before the war. Jake watched in silence, unable to look away. Then, the images changed. The bright cities darkened, shadows spreading across the world. The sky turned red as black ships filled it, and explosions tore through the towers. Arya looked away, her hands shaking. The Kethar came. They wanted our code, our life. Jake clenched his fists, feeling anger rise in his chest. They destroyed everything. Yes, Arya said, and now they want Earth. Because you carry the same pattern we once had. The symbols around them shifted again, showing images of DNA strands intertwining. Jake stared in shock. Wait, those are human. Arya touched the light. Long ago, our ancestors sent the seed code through space and it found your world. That is why you are able to connect with the code now. Jake stepped closer, watching the strands merge. So, humans are part of your species, Arya smiled faintly. Not part. Continuation. The light from the sphere grew brighter, and suddenly the floor beneath them glowed with symbols. Jake felt a vibration under his feet, a rhythm like a heartbeat. Then a voice, soft and mechanical, filled the chamber. Speaking in a language he didn't know, Arya looked startled. The code? It is awakening. Jake looked around, the lights swirling faster, forming a pattern that hovered in front of him. What's happening? He asked. Arya answered quietly. It is testing you. The lights wrapped around Jake's body, glowing threads spinning like liquid stars. He felt a warmth spreading through his chest. Then through his mind, images flashed before his eyes. Earth, oceans, mountains, ancient creatures, and strange alien temples buried deep underground. He saw humans standing beside beings like Arya, building together, sharing technology. Then it all vanished, leaving him gasping for breath. Arya caught him as he stumbled. Jake, what did you see? He looked at her, eyes wide. I saw us humans and your kind working together long before history began. It's like we were meant to help each other. Arya's eyes filled with tears. Then the code has chosen you. You are the bridge between worlds. Jake shook his head slowly, trying to steady his breathing. Chosen or not, I don't know if I can handle this. Arya placed her hand over his heart. You already are handling it, Jake. The code would not reveal itself to the weak. The sphere pulsed again, and new shapes appeared in the air and a map of stars. Hundreds of glowing points forming constellations. In the center, one star shone brighter than all the rest, its light pulsing in rhythm with the chamber. Arya pointed to it. That is the source, the birthplace of the code. It connects all life that carries its pattern. Jake looked closer. And Earth? Arya touched another glowing point near the edge. There, she said, far from the source. But still linked. Suddenly, the lights flickered and the air grew colder. A deep hum filled the chamber, darker and heavier. Arya's expression changed instantly. They have found us again, Jake turned. How? We're underground. The code's awakening sent a signal, Arya said quickly. The hunters can trace it. The walls began to shake as dust fell from the ceiling. Arya grabbed the sphere, the light inside flickering wildly. Jake lifted Luma, holding her close as the child clung to his neck. From above came a sharp metallic screech, the sound of machines cutting through rock. Arya shouted, The entrance won't hold long. We must go deeper. Jake followed her through a narrow tunnel that led further into the cave. Behind them, beams of red light burst through the cracks, burning through the stone. They ran until the tunnel opened into another chamber, smaller but brighter. At the center stood a crystal structure shaped like a heart. Pulsing with golden light, Arya gasped softly. The heart of the code, Jake looked at her. What does it do? It connects everything, she said. It can awaken the full pattern inside you. Before Jake could speak, the ceiling exploded behind them. A red drone crashing through, Arya turned, her eyes glowing bright white. Go, Jake, she shouted. Take Luma and run, Jake hesitated. But the look in her eyes told him she wasn't asking. He ran toward the tunnel. Holding Luma tight behind him, Arya raised her hands, and the entire cave filled with light. The last thing Jake saw before turning away was Arya standing like a goddess of light, facing the darkness alone. Then the tunnel sealed behind him with a burst of golden fire. The earth trembled, the sound echoing through the mountain. Jake stumbled out of another exit, gasping for air. Luma's small hand glowed softly against his chest. He looked back at the cave, whispering, Hold on, Arya. In the distance, the red lights of the hunters moved closer again. Jake took a deep breath and started running. He didn't know where the path would lead. But one thing was certain. The secret of the code had only just begun to reveal itself. And now it was part of him. The forest was silent again. But it was not peace. It was the silence after chaos. Smoke drifted between the trees. Glowing faintly under the moonlight, Jake ran through the darkness. His breath heavy, his arms wrapped around Luma. The child clung to him, trembling, glowing softly in fear. Behind them, the earth still shook from the explosion that sealed the cave. He stopped near a fallen tree, hiding behind its thick trunk. His body ached, his heart pounded, but his mind was fixed on one thought: Aria. He looked back toward the distant hills. Where the cave entrance once stood, now it was just a mound of broken rock. She's gone, Jake whispered, his voice shaking. She stayed behind. Luma looked up at him, her glowing eyes full of sadness. She lived, the child said quietly. Her voice soft but certain. Jake frowned. You think she's alive? Luma nodded slowly. I feel her. Jake didn't know how, but he believed it. He stood up, brushing dirt from his jacket. Then we keep moving, he said, his voice firm. She wanted us to survive. They walked deeper into the forest, guided only by moonlight and Luma's soft glow. Hours passed. And finally, they reached an old cabin on the edge of a river. It looked abandoned, half broken, but it would have to do inside. Jake lit a lantern and sat Luma down on a dusty bed. He found some food and water, though he wasn't sure if she could even eat it. Luma smiled faintly and whispered, Thank you. Jake smiled back. You sound more human every day. She looked at him curiously. Maybe I am, she said, and then her eyes flickered with light. Jake leaned against the wall, staring at the lantern's flame. His thoughts were heavy, about Araya, about what she had told him, about what he had seen in the code. He didn't know what was real anymore, only that something inside him had changed. When he touched the code, he had felt life, the heartbeat of another world, and now that same energy pulsed faintly under his skin. Suddenly the air shimmered and the lantern flickered. Luma gasped. She come, she whispered a moment later. A soft blue light filled the cabin, swirling in the air like mist. From that light, a faint figure appeared, Aria. Glowing and weak but alive, Jake's eyes widened. Aria, he breathed, stepping forward. Her form flickered, not solid. More like a projection made of light. I had to merge with the code to survive, Aria said softly, her voice echoing like wind. The hunters destroyed the temple. But I am still here? Jake's chest tightened. You're inside the code? She nodded. Yes, my body's gone, but my essence lives in the network. I can still guide you, Luma ran forward. Touching the light, Mother, she whispered. Aria smiled gently. My little one, you must stay close to him now. Jake clenched his fists. We can still bring you back, right? There must be a way. Aria looked at him with sad eyes. There is, but it requires more than you think. Jake frowned. What do you mean? The code cannot complete itself without a balance, Aria said. You are the missing link, Jake. He took a step back. You mean what you said before? About me creating the next generation? Aria's image glowed brighter. Yes, but now it is more than that. If we fail, the code will fade forever. And both our species will die. Jake felt the weight of her words press against him like a storm. He wanted to help, but fear filled his heart. What if I can't do it? He asked quietly. Aria's voice softened. You already have the spark inside you. The code awakened it. You only need to accept it. Jake shook his head. You're asking me to change what it means to be human. Aria smiled faintly. Maybe that is what being human truly means, and to evolve. To protect life even when it isn't your own. Silence filled the cabin for a long moment. Luma looked between them, her eyes wide, sensing the importance of the moment. Jake looked at her, at the small glow in her chest, so full of life and innocence. He took a deep breath. If I do this, what happens to me? Aria's voice trembled. You will become the bridge, part human, part Alarian, the first of the next generation. Jake's voice cracked. And if I refuse? Then the code dies, she said softly, and my world and yours. Both will end. Jake's heart pounded, his hands shaking. He thought of Earth, of the wars, the greed, the pain humans caused each other. Maybe the world did need something new, something better. He looked back at Aria's fading light, then at Luma, who whispered, Please, Jake. Her small hand reached for his. Glowing softly, warm and gentle, he knelt down. Closing his eyes, "All right," he whispered. "Tell me what I need to do." The cabin filled with a soft golden light. Arya's image brightened, spreading like sunrise across the room. "Place your hand over your heart," she said. Jake did, and instantly warmth spread through his body. Luma touched his other hand, and their light connected, forming a glowing circle around them. The air vibrated, the lantern shattered, and the entire cabin shook. Jake felt energy rushing through him, light, sound, and memory all at once. He saw visions of galaxies, of ancient worlds reborn, of life spreading through the stars. Arya's voice echoed through his mind. "You are the link, Jake. Now the code lives through you." When the light finally faded, Jake fell to his knees, gasping for breath. Luma stood beside him, her glow brighter than ever. Arya's voice whispered faintly in the air. "You have done it, my child. You have given us a future." Jake opened his eyes and saw the world differently. Colors pulsed softly around him. The air shimmered with invisible life. He wasn't just human anymore, he was something new. Something more. He looked at Luma, who smiled gently. "You changed," she said. Jake nodded slowly, his voice calm. So did everything. And somewhere in the wind, Arya's voice whispered one last time, "The next dawn begins with you." Jake stood, feeling the pulse of the code inside his heart. The stars above seemed closer now, shining brighter than ever. And though he didn't know what came next, he knew one thing for certain: the choice had been made and there was no going back. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Jake opened his eyes. The air around him shimmered softly, carrying a strange warmth that felt alive. He was lying on the grass near the riverbank, the old cabin behind him now half covered in vines that glowed faintly with golden veins. The world looked familiar, yet completely changed. The sky wasn't blue anymore. It shimmered between silver and violet, filled with drifting lights that moved like stars but breathed like living things. Jake sat up slowly, his body feeling light, strong and calm. His hands glowed faintly beneath the skin, golden lines pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He touched his chest and felt the steady thrum of energy. The code, it was alive inside him now, not as something foreign, but as part of who he was. He looked around, calling softly, "Luma?" A soft voice answered from behind him, "Here." Jake turned and saw her standing near the water, the little alien girl who now looked older, taller, her glow brighter and more stable. She smiled at him, her silver eyes shining. "You slept long." Jake stood, still unsteady. "How long?" "2 days," she said gently. "The world changed while you rested." Jake looked around again, trying to take it in. The trees shimmered with light, leaves made of living crystal, rivers glowing with energy instead of just water. Even the air hummed softly, like a song sung by nature itself. "What happened?" Jake asked quietly. "Where's Arya?" Luma's expression softened, and she pointed upward. Jake followed her gaze, and saw light gathering in the sky. A shape forming out of the clouds. Arya's face appeared there, soft and radiant, woven from light and air. Her voice filled the valley, gentle yet strong. "I am here, Jake, in the code, in the wind. In the heart of this new world." Jake felt a lump in his throat, his chest heavy with emotion. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved your species." Arya's voice echoed like a melody. "We did it, human, together." She looked at him with warmth. "The seed code spread across your earth, merging with your world, healing what was broken, growing what was lost." Jake turned, looking at the land again. The air shimmered with life, and he realized what she meant. Earth and Alaris had become one. Mountains pulsed with light like living hearts. Oceans sparkled as if filled with starlight. The wind carried whispers and faint voices. "Human and alien speaking as one," Arya continued. "You are the first of the bridge kind, the connection between human and Alarian. You carry the balance both our worlds needed." Jake lowered his head, whispering, "I don't know if I deserve that." Her voice softened. "You didn't need to deserve it, Jake. You only needed to choose." Luma walked to him and took his hand. "She is proud of you," she said quietly. Jake looked down at her, smiling faintly. "So am I." "Kid?" The two stood together at the edge of the glowing river, watching the new sun rise above the horizon. It was larger than before, bright white and gold, surrounded by a halo of energy that made the entire world gleam. For a moment, the beauty was too much to take in. Jake whispered, "It's like a dream." Luma shook her head gently. No, it's a beginning. He turned to her. What happens now? Luma's eyes glowed brighter. The world will change slowly. Humans will start to feel the code too. They will see the light, the connection. Jake frowned softly. Will they understand it? Luma smiled. They will learn as you did. As the morning light grew stronger, Jake felt something stir deep inside him. He could hear voices in the wind, laughter, songs, and whispers of creatures both human and alien. He realized the code wasn't just inside him. It was part of everything now. He could sense life stretching across the planet. Breathing as one, Arya's voice returned, soft like a whisper in his ear. You gave birth to the next age, Jake. An age of unity. He looked at the sky again, tears filling his eyes. Will I ever see you again? Her light flickered gently. I am always here, wherever life grows. Wherever the code breathes, Jake smiled faintly. Then I'll never be alone again. The light in the sky shimmered, and slowly began to fade before it vanished completely. Arya's last words echoed through the valley. Remember, human, and love was the first code, and it will always be the last. The wind carried her voice away, and for a moment the world was silent. Jake knelt beside the river, his reflection glowing faintly in the water. He looked at himself, not the man he once was, but something beyond human. His eyes gleamed with gold. His veins shimmered like starlight. Luma stood beside him, her hand glowing in his. Together, they looked toward the horizon, where new cities of light began to rise in the distance. The earth was alive again, not as a world divided by species, but as a single breathing creation. The forest sang, the rivers danced, and the stars above seemed to draw closer. Jake whispered, "This is the new dawn." Luma nodded softly. "And it starts with you." He smiled, lifting his gaze to the sky for the first time in his life. He didn't feel small under the stars. He felt connected to the universe, to Arya, to every living thing. The wind brushed past his face, warm and full of light, and somewhere far away, the voice of Arya whispered through the trees. Humanity's greatest story has just begun. The river glowed brighter. The world shimmered in harmony, and as Jake and Luma walked into the rising light, the sky bloomed with color. The dawn of two worlds had come together as one, and the future had finally opened its eyes.